Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today, including Ian Furness, standing by, brought to you by The Waddling Dog. Also sponsor of our poll question, which is really interesting today. We'll present it a little bit later. Doug in Nanaimo, Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox regarding Elias Pettersson. I think if you're a top-notch athlete, the worst thing you can do is see what's being said on X. It's a cesspool of information. Again, that's from Doug in Nanaimo.
Yeah. Guess what? Twitter is toxic. It is negative. There's a lot of bad people on it, but that's what Twitter is. But there's a lot of good people on Twitter as well.
I think the best advice you could give Elias Pettersson when it comes to Twitter is unfollow Ian Furness, KGR Sports Radio, Kraken Hockey Network. He joins us now. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I would add it's a cesspool of hate is what it is. It's just the worst.
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't have to be on it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we deal with the criticism, too.
It drains you, Ian. It drains you. It can emotionally drains you.
Then why are we all on it all the time?
Yeah, well,
I don't have a choice. That's an edict from the radio station for us. Yeah. I wouldn't be on it otherwise, or I would just be anonymous. You know, I've got friends in the media business that don't have to be on it, that are on it anonymously. You know, and that's the way to do it. Is EP40 under fire up there? What's going on?
Yeah, well, we signed the big deal, $11.6 million a year. The numbers on the ice haven't been there, and there's been a lot of criticism. And now the word is that he's the type of athlete that lets the criticism on social media or wherever the case may be, traditional media, lets it get to him.
Yeah. Well, don't have rabbit ears, man. It's hard, and it's easier to honestly. We joke all the time, guys. That's easier said than done. Right? That's easier said than done. We say that all the time. You know, I say that. I don't care what people say, but then you look on there and, people are just crushing. And I love your fans up there are awesome. I did find out from a couple hundred people on Twitter that it was Tyler Myers 1000 and there are T-shirts available, and I love all you guys for pointing that out. I haven't ordered mine yet, but thank you. But yeah, I mean, the other stuff, you're still a human, and it's the personal shots that are hard to take, and that's just part of it.
Yeah. And when I say, why are we on it all the time? I get it. We're on it for business. We're supposed to do that sort of thing. But then I find myself going down rabbit holes. And what the hell am I doing here? 2 hours later, and I'm supposed to be focusing on sports, and I don't. Hey, Ian, moving on here. You have an update on DK Metcalf's health. We saw him get carted off in Atlanta.
Yeah. Grade 1 MCL sprain, and they say week to week, and because we all play doctors on the radio or TV, right? We all kind of do that. But I've got a friend actually I went to college with that's an orthopedic surgeon, and I checked with him yesterday just to say, before it even came out, hey, MCL, what are we hearing? And it truly is week to week. There's a very small chance that he could play on Sunday against Buffalo. I kind of doubt that. It sounds like it's probably 2 weeks is the best prognosis. But, I mean, listen, in today's world, when you see Brendan Ayuk go out for the season and, despite all who and what he is, Deshaun Watson go out for the season, things like that, McCaffrey hasn't played yet this year. If it's a 1 or 2 week injury for DK Metcalf, then you move on. That's okay. It's maybe the best case scenario.
I'm just impressed you went to college with a surgeon.
He's one of those guys you go to college with. His nickname was Noodle, and not Jamie McLennan, but it was Noodle singular, and it was McLennan, but it was like all of a sudden he's like, "What? You're doing what? Like, how did that happen?"
He's probably thinking the same thing as you. I thought you were capable of more.
Well, everyone thinks that. Mostly my wife and others. Yeah.
I get I get that all the time. Hey, I think a week ago or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, we were complaining about or criticizing. Speaking of public criticism, the Seahawks defense. Where did that defensive performance come from down in Georgia?
Well, it helps when you get a couple guys back, or at least one guy back, and that was Byron Murphy. Made a massive difference. It's a first-round draft pick out of Texas. Record. And I think when he was drafted, we talked about it. The fact that he was a guy that when he was drafted, he was kind of the body type is a little like Aaron Donald, right? And we talked about that when he was drafted. We saw him kind of look like that against Atlanta. Like he did look like that against Atlanta. They were still missing a bunch of their secondary. I think, at some point, give the coaches credit. Mike McDonald's supposed to be a defensive genius, and in that game, they held Kirk Cousins, that offense, to 14 points. They kind of looked like a defensive genius.
Didn't they have a fourth stringer starting on the offensive? As you switch gears here to on the offensive line and he did just fine.
Yeah, guy named Mike Jarrell. Great story. Division II player, and just for context, Division II is what Simon Fraser was in when they had football. Division II, like that's not like you don't see dudes in Division II that look like Grady Jarrett from the Atlanta Falcons. You just don't. We see small college guys from smaller programs step up. They drafted him with the thought that he would be, in all essence, redshirting this year. Like he would play a little bit maybe, but probably just kind of on the roster, learn the position, learn how the speed of the game and the strength is different. He played okay. Depending on whose grades you look at, there's Pro Football Focus and others didn't love what he did, but I think by most of our eyes, for a four-string offensive tackle, his first ever game in the NFL, he held up okay. And at the most important time into the second quarter, that offensive line game gave Geno Smith a pocket that was as pretty as can be, and he threw a laser for that touchdown to DK that kind of was a game changer.
Ian, very sad news out of Seattle this week with the death of Tony Ventrella. We all watched him. 80s, 90s, just a big name in Seattle. Such a good sportscast. He also loved Vancouver. He loved the Canucks. How tough of a news was that this week in Seattle?
Yeah, it was tough. Tony's a guy that, like you said, we lived in a golden era. And listen, let's throw some flowers at the guy, next to you, Rick. Great sportscasters during the nightly news. Don, you were one of those. Your highlights are still a highlight. You do a hell of a job. And, those days are gone, right? Like those days have gone where you tune in to the only place you got your sports news was, the two newspapers in town and basically the nightly sportscast. And Tony, Bruce King, Wayne Cody, those three guys were icons. And I know you guys up in Vancouver got all three of those stations. I was really fortunate. I was Bruce King's producer for 6 years. Wow. And he was, and Tony and Wayne at the same time were on TV, and we all watched each other. We were all competitive. I was friends with their producers and vice versa, and we traded video when guys screwed up and forgot to roll on something. Donnie, you can relate to that, right?
Love that.
Yeah, and it was just a different era. Tony was so different. Like Wayne was this huge mountain of a man that I know a lot of your viewers and listeners remember that was kind of funny. His parents were from vaudeville. They were performers. Bruce was straight. Like when I wrote for him, it was AP, who, what, when, where, why, and how. And Tony just did his own thing. Wrestling hold of the week, haircut of the week, all these things, and it worked. They were all three different, and it worked. And Tony's the last one we had of those. He was 80 years old, which was weird because he never felt like he was old. The first few years I covered the Seahawks for Fox 13, he was still doing stuff for Seahawks.com. We had dinner a handful of times. Loved his food, loved to know where to go. Italian guy. But he was a sweetheart of a man. And just a great guy, loved his family and all those things you hear. And all that was true. From a professional standpoint, guys, he was unique, and he was one of a kind, and he did it his own way. And frankly, that's hard to do. Like, that's really hard to do, and especially hard to do to make it work, because a lot of times you won't get the rope and the leniency to let you kind of develop that. But he was truly an icon. He was a legend, and sad. I saw him once this summer at Seahawks training camp, and you could kind of tell it was getting close, and so it wasn't a huge surprise, but it was sad nonetheless.
Yeah, it was a golden era, and I hope everybody down there realizes how much people in Vancouver soaked that in with Bruce and Wayne and Tony. It was really, really important to us. Tough turn in, but very quickly. The Kraken hosting Colorado tonight, part of Frozen Frenzy. 3 straight wins for the Kraken. What's going on with Dan Bylsma's hockey team?
Pretty good hockey team, guys, honestly. They probably should have put the C on Jordan Eberle a few years ago. He's got 5 goals already since they put the C on his jersey. You know what they are? They're exactly what they were 2 years ago, but playing a different style. They're a deep team. They're a 4-line team. They don't have high-end guys. McCann may end up with 35 goals. He'll probably lead it when it's all said and done. Ebbs will probably have 25, 30 when it's all said and done. They score by committee. Joey was really good in goal the other night. DeCord was really good in goal. I'd be curious to see if he gets to start tonight. They're not having a morning skate today, so we don't know. I think I might go back to him. He was really good, and they haven't gone back-to-back goaltenders yet. They're really deep on the blue line, although that's a massive loss. Vince Dunn's out on LTIR. And by the way, it's not Vegas LTIR. This is actually legit LTIR. Dunn's banged up. He was banged up in the third game of the year. Missed a game, came back, missed a game last week on Saturday. So they're going to just try to get him healthy and right. So Josh Mahura's in. But they're good and they're deep, and Bilesma lets them play. And I'll tell you right now, if I had to watch Calgary play every night, that would be I couldn't do that, man. That is the worst. Ryan Huska, man, you played for Kamloops, for goodness sakes, man. You know how to get up and down the ice. What the hell is this left wing lock trap nonsense you're playing in 2024? That's a horrible – but you know what? The Kraken found a way to beat them anyway, despite the fact that it was just a muddy, ugly, sloppy game that never got outside of the two blue lines. They found a way to win. Now they get Colorado tonight. This is a good test, right? Colorado's struggling. So if you can beat them on this 5-game homestand and go 3-0 on the homestand, that's a pretty good start before they hit the road again next week.
Ian, thanks for this. And all the best to the people of Seattle, and a lot of people mourning the loss of Tony Ventrella.
Back at you guys. And again, I shout out to you, Donnie. You know what it's like to do those every night, and you do a hell of a job even today on this show. So it's a lost art. So yeah, we miss Tony and Bruce and Wayne, and still love what you do too. So take care.
Right back at you, like you say. Thanks, Ian.